Hi friends, welcome back. This is the pre-work video for session 3 and we're hoping you'll get a chance to watch it and engage with it before February 9th when we next meet. Just to remind us of the framing we're using, we started with community building, and last time we looked at this notion of beholding and believing, so trying to understand a little bit more about the systems that we were addressing, and we're going to stay focused on that for our third session. So in this session around beholding and believing and really looking at these systems we're engaging with, we want to deepen our understanding of how we're seeing, how we're understanding, and how we're feeling the different systems in the calls that we have heard. In this session, we're going to really focus on identifying core beliefs, or what is it that we are holding that is going to support us in moving into right relationship, or that is blocking us from being in right relationship. And as with all the sessions and the work in between, we're hoping this offers a chance for deeper integration and connection and reconnection, both with ourselves, with each other, and with the bigger things we're trying to address. The first framework we invited you into is this notion of the 3 circles, that we exist always at the center of being and conscious of our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And so just as we did earlier, we invite you again as you watch this session to bring some consciousness to your body, how your body is reacting physically, what you're feeling emotionally, how your body is responding, and the information you get from that, to listening to what spirit is saying to you, listening to your own spirit, listening to how the truth is coming through, and then to be processing intellectually the information we're giving here. And so again, the invitation is to be consciously at the center of these 3 circles and ways of receiving information, ways of processing, and ways of knowing. Last time we used this model of the 4 eyes of oppression, that any system we're dealing with, whether it's white supremacy, climate degradation, the different aspects of our history and culture that requires the need for reparations and apologies to Indigenous peoples and peoples of African descent, that there's some ideology at the center of that each of us have internalized aspects of that ideology. It might be different what we've internalized based on our identity, that we then interact and reinforce that ideology when we are with each other, and that our institutions are designed and created to maintain, perpetuate, and expand whatever the disparity of the ideology is. And that we want to understand these systems on all these levels, because to change them, the change has to happen at all the levels. We have to change the fundamental concept or ideology. We have to change what we've internalized about it. We have to change what we're externalizing about it. And we have to change our institutions. In this session, we're going to be focusing on the notion of core beliefs. So where last time we talked about ideology as a way to name some of the systems, what we're going to look at here are what are the core beliefs, what are the ways we have deeply internalized those systems and deeply externalized them with each other. So I want to talk for a minute about what core beliefs are. Core beliefs are things that we believe so much that we don't often even recognize them as a belief, but rather that's just the way things are. It's our fundamental worldview. Core beliefs, therefore, can be conscious. We can say things about them, and often we hold many, many core beliefs that we are unconscious of. And so therefore, we can also be explicit in talking about core beliefs, and often they show up implicitly in how we are doing and being with ourselves and each other. All of us as individuals, every organization I've ever worked with, big systems, hold contradictory core beliefs. That's just the way it works. So that doesn't mean we've done something wrong when we recognize contradictory core beliefs. It just means they're both in the system. And it's important to recognize them because our core beliefs shape our actions and everything we do. So I just want to give a little personal example of this before I talk about how they show up among friends. I grew up in a household in the 80s where it was not okay to be queer. There wasn't a lot of talk about that. I wasn't allowed to watch any TV shows or any media that was maybe hadn't even a reference to gay people. And so as a queer person, I grew up in a space with core beliefs saying that basically I couldn't exist as a queer person. There might be gay people over there, but that couldn't be me. But it was me because I am queer. And so I internalized core beliefs that I couldn't be gay. And so my coming out process had to involve unearthing those core beliefs, rectifying them, acknowledging them, processing them, getting rid of some of them, and making space for the core belief that not only could I be queer, but I could be whole and queer. And because those weren't the core beliefs I grew up with, that took some work. Luckily, I had some great community. A number of you on this call and watching this video were part of that community that helped me do that. And even though I have been out for decades, even though I am professionally out, even though I'm an activist, I have queer community, there are still aspects of some of those initial core beliefs that reside within me. And so I'll have moments when I find myself trying to straighten up for something. And I'm like, wow, that is some internalized homophobia and some core beliefs I still hold about it's not okay to be queer. And one of the things that's really important about this work of identifying core beliefs is that we do so with as little judgment and as much compassion as possible. That when I recognize or unearth a way that a homophobic core belief still exists within me, I can immediately go to a place of shame, like I should have moved past that, of blaming myself, like, why didn't I do better? Why is that still there? And some abhorrence, like, oh my gosh, that exists within me. I don't like that. But when I put those negative feelings on it, which are legit feelings, I don't actually serve myself into moving into greater wholeness. And to the extent possible, when we're identifying core beliefs, we just want to say, here it is. Then we can do the work of saying which of the core beliefs we want to nurture and feed because they are positive, because they are just, because they are life-giving, and which of the core beliefs that we want to work on changing because they are unjust, because they are soul-sucking, and because they do not serve us. And if we can do that work with ourselves with compassion, we can do that work with others with compassion, and we're going to be more effective at making change. Doesn't mean we don't get to say things are wrong, but we're trying to take some of the blame and judgment off of it at this recognizing stage so that we can see the whole picture. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how some core beliefs show up among friends. And what I want to do here is just read a very small excerpt of minute 2016-64 that we approved at sessions around white supremacy. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to pull out what I hear as some of the core beliefs that are embedded in this minute. We are complicit in white supremacy. We at New England Yearly Meeting have been colonized by our white supremacist culture and fall short of our full potential as a gathered body of Quaker meetings because of this colonization. We commit to engaging and interrupting white supremacy in ourselves, within individuals, interpersonally, in our meetings, and at all systems levels of New England Yearly Meeting. So I made a whole other video where I talk about our use of the language colonized. They're in the virtual plenaries. They're in our Google Classroom. You can check those out. That's definitely some stuff that needs to get unpacked. But I want to, right now, lift up what I am hearing as some of the core beliefs embedded in this statement. And again, some of these are going to be explicit, the language we're using, and some are going to be implicit. So we are a part of white supremacy. We say that in our first sentence very explicitly. We're acknowledging our part in it. We then talk about how white supremacy was something that was put on us, which is a little bit different than what I think actually happened. Yes, we all grew up in this culture. Yes, it was put on us. Yes, the examples I just gave about the homophobia I internalized as a young person were put on me. And if we're still perpetuating it and we're adults now, there's a level of acceptance we have done with that, or collusion we've done with that, that's a little bit more conscious. We talk about being active agents, right? We can interrupt white supremacy at all these different levels, and we talk about being passive agents. This was something that was done to us. Those are contradictory core beliefs. We are active, we are passive. They're both in the mix of how we're understanding our part. A core belief we have is that white supremacy lessens us, right? So even though many of us in New England Yearly Meeting are white and benefit in material ways from white supremacy, we're understanding that on a deeper spiritual level, white supremacy lessens all of us, not just Black, Indigenous people of color that white supremacy actively targets, but it lessens our entire society. It lessens all people, and it diminishes us as a faith community. And then we express some really powerful core beliefs about change, that we have the capacity to interrupt white supremacy, that we can change, and that we can make change. And that's great, because if we don't believe we can make change, we're never going to be successful at doing it. And so once we've identified some core beliefs, now we're going to explore how we're going to work with them. And so I sort of think about this as a branching process. So the first is let's identify the core belief, which I just identified a few for us. There's many more in that minute. And then we want to say, is a given core belief aligned with what we're trying to do, or is it misaligned, not aligned with what we're trying to do? If it's aligned with what we're trying to do, then a question we want to ask is, how do we nurture this belief? How do we grow it? How do we make it bigger? How do we manifest it? If the core belief is misaligned or not aligned with our goal, then we need to look at a few different things. What's supporting this belief? If it's not aligned with something we say we're doing, what's supporting it? So what is it doing for us? This belief has got to be doing something for us, otherwise we would have gotten rid of it. And then how can we change this belief if it's not aligned with what it is we say we're trying to do? And so again, just going back to the story I shared about my own internalized homophobia, that belief is supported by a lot in our society. What it was doing for me when I pass as straight is it provides me with a level of perceived safety and sometimes access to power and resources. And then how can I change this belief? I can talk about it, I can process it, I can be with people who hold opposing core beliefs that are positive. I can look at what I'm getting from it and where I can get those things from someplace else, or maybe relinquish my need for those things, and I can keep working on it. So going back to these core beliefs that I identified around white supremacy, there's a few that are not aligned with our goal. So this notion that white supremacy is something that was put on us, there's aspects that are true, but there's a whole level of our individual and corporate collusion with white supremacy that we need to have some more agency in. So what's supporting us? What supports the belief that it was put on us? A lot of history, a lot of structure to back that up. And as Quakers, and this connects to the next question, what is this belief doing for us? We love to be in a victim mindset. We really are comfortable in something wrong was done to us because we don't always want to deal with we may have done wrong to other people. So we really need to look at these two notions of white supremacy was something that was put on us and that we're passive agents. And there's a lot of other core beliefs within Quakerism that support that as well as contradict that. So the work we need to do is how do we change this core belief? We might look at the ways that we have actively colluded with white supremacy. We might look at the ways that some of us benefit from white supremacy and our emotional attachment and sense of safety with those benefits. We might look at the ways in which taking a passive stance or a victim stance allows us to relinquish responsibility we may not be feeling ready to step into, and then practice stepping into that responsibility. There's a whole bunch of other things we're going to talk about in the course. But when we identify core beliefs that are not aligned, we really want to do some deeper processing with them so that we can start to change them. So now I want to talk about the intertwined core beliefs of the sin of separation. So all the issues that we're looking at in responding to the call, white supremacy, climate change, reparations, were created out of shared core beliefs about separation and domination. Now, we don't talk a ton about separation among Quakers, and I've rarely ever heard us talk about domination. But for a small religious force, we have been a powerful group in the shaping of our nation. Our role in the Indian boarding schools and the genocidal practices and trauma that we caused to a generation, actually multiple generations of Indigenous communities is huge. Our early colonial roles in shaping how many of the East Coast communities formed and developed and culture got created, we had a large hand in that. And so there are aspects of separation and domination that we have been a powerful player in. And so one of the things we need to look at today is what are our core beliefs about separation and domination, particularly when they're things we don't talk about a lot. Where and how do we see them manifesting among us today as a religious society? And what are other core beliefs we hold that are related to these core beliefs around separation and domination? And here's where we want to look both at what else is feeding the sense of entitlement to domination and the support for separation, as well as what are core beliefs we have that let us transform those, that are about wholeness, that are about solidarity, that are about healing, that are about justice, that are about power with. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about in our class on the 9th. And so now the reflection part for you, again, writing, drawing, moving, talking, praying, whatever way of processing works for you. And the invitation is to look back through the work that you've done for this course so far. So your journal reflections, any writing or drawing assignments you've done, things you've read, watched, listened to, notes from the sessions, your small group conversations. And to start to identify what are some of the core beliefs about these different issues that you're seeing. Maybe they're ones you already knew but are getting new insights on. Maybe they're core beliefs that are new to you. What are some of the core beliefs that you're recognizing that you hold, that exist in here, not just out here? And as you name those core beliefs, how do they land in your body? How does your body react? What are the feelings that come up? And again, the invitation is to do this without judgment, but just loving compassion, to feel fully what you're feeling, to see fully what you're seeing, and to be fully with the understandings that you currently have, knowing that together we're going to grow and expand those. So again, thanks for doing this pre-work, and we look forward to seeing you on the 9th. Bye.